Let's talk about the evolution of the forehand and how it can make your forehand that much better. But before we get started, I want to thank Love Tennis for providing these videos to help us analyze and help you get your tennis game to the next level. So you're probably thinking, what am I talking about the evolution of tennis and why is it important to me? Well, from when I look at the forehand, I'm looking kind of the last probably 10 years. I'm going to use the example of Sampras, Federer, and Jack Sock and how the forehand has kind of not really changed, but how it's kind of morphing in a little bit in a couple different ways and how it can really help you. And what that really has to do with is making sure that you're stretching and using momentum to speed the racket up. With the way you use your racket, you can create so much acceleration. And if you want to do that, this is the video you need to watch. So the very first caveat, though, is that you have to have the fundamentals. Everybody hears racket head acceleration and power, and the first thing they think about is, what do I have to do? Well, before you do that special thing that we're going to talk about, it's really important to have the fundamentals down. So before we even get started with what is that thing you need to start working on, let's go over Federer and the fundamentals of the forehand so you can understand what you have to be doing before you even start thinking about this. So the very first fundamental thing is the unit turn, where Federer is turning his shoulders here and creating separation between his hips and his shoulders and preparing the racket for the forward swing. And in this, you're going to see a couple things. A, he's moving usually with his outside leg, but you're not going to see this much here because he's moving to an inside-out forehand. Now, it's really crucial here you see the separation in the hips and the shoulders to create that stretch in the core, in the torso. From that stretch, this is where I want you to really pay close attention to. How he's setting up the racket, that all that stretching is going to be unleashed into the ball by first pushing the legs, which is going to go up to the hips and the torso, to turn the shoulders, to the hand, to the racket head. And now you can really see how he's pulling, and the racket is lagging behind the entire body, and then it catches up because it's pretty much being pulled like a whip, a cracking of a whip. You have the end handle where you crack that, and the energy goes all the way to the end. These are, and I'm glossing over it to some extent, these are the fundamentals of the forehand. Making sure that as he makes contact, which you can see here, he's not muscling over, he's just letting the racket naturally travel around from the momentum he's built up. Now, we're going to take a look at Pete Sampras as he's hitting a forehand here, and you're going to see the exact same things. Now, when we see Pete Sampras, he's moving to his outside leg, like I was talking about with Roger. He's creating a separation in his hips and shoulders with great preparation in the unit turn. His racket's ready to go forward, and he's going to start the turn by pushing with the outside leg here, uncoiling the hip to the shoulder, to the arm, and the racket. And Pete Sampras was known for having a really, really good forehand. So I think this is a really good example of the fundamentals that work across a good range of players. Now, here's the key. It's the momentum factor. How much momentum can you build into your forward swing, which can add more acceleration? And so when you're probably going, Kevin, what is this momentum factor you're talking about? Let's look at it right here. So all the fundamentals are still there. We look at Sampras here. Now what I want you to do is watch his racket and how it speeds up. From this position and his racket's just going to drop here and then go forward. So he creates this momentum, and then he has this stretch in his wrist that creates this lag. Now, what you're going to notice with Sampras, there's not a lot of lag because the racket doesn't have to move that far based on this position. It's not a bad position. He has a great forehand. But when you go to players like Federer, and we go to that same position, look at the difference in the racket position. How now instead of having a racket up, the racket is down. And instead of having it just go this way where it falls like Sampras, the racket is going to go in almost a circular loop, creating more movement before it gets into the ball. It's speeding up more and creates more momentum before it gets to the ball. So if you look at the racket here, and you can see already how the racket's being pulled, and this whip-like action right here sends the racket forward because of the shoulder, creates more racketed speed. Federer has more of a heavy ball. He's hitting more of a heavy ball because he's creating this lag and then snap. And be careful. I want you to be careful when you hear the word snap. The snap isn't because he's snapping forward. It's because all that energy is being transferred down to the arm, and it acts like a whip against the racket and it's pulled forward into the ball by the shoulder and then allowed to dissipate here. The next evolution is where you start to see players like Jack Sock, who takes us another step forward by having this racket in this position. Again, you see where Sampras had the racket up, Federer had the racket down, and Jack Sock is even going even further to create even more momentum, to create more racket head speed through the ball. So you can see how this evolution of having the racket here, then here, instead of having the racket just drop here, the racket can now create more lag and snap through the ball, more momentum that can be used by sending that energy up from the legs through the body to the arm. Now here's the thing, you're probably wondering, so Kevin, should I lag and snap more? Is that the key for me having a big forehand? A layer beneath that, before you even can get to this point, what all three players are doing a really good job of is making sure that they're relaxed while hitting the ball. Most recreational players, as they try to do this or they try to hit a bigger forehand, they clutch the racket even harder and try to get the racket around, and creates a lot of tension, a lot of stiffness. You didn't see that in any of these players. All of them were relaxed, which now sets the foundation for, as you have great fundamentals and you start pulling forward, this is now allowed to transfer that energy forward. Most recreational players are squeezing the racket really tight, choking off the power that they could be creating if they had less tension. And so you're probably wondering, what should I do? Next time you go out to a practice court with a ball machine, or you can do it with a wall, or even having a coach feed you a ball, start off by hitting a couple balls at what I call tension 10. And so what this means is squeezing the racket, tension 10. Don't try to hit it too hard because we don't want you to hurt your elbow. And just hit a couple, and you're going to feel how tight it is. Once you start hitting maybe a couple balls at tension 10, I want you to go to 1. Now you have a huge disparity between the two tensions. Go to 1, maybe the racket kind of spins around your hand, maybe it doesn't go anywhere, that's totally fine. It's just about feeling the tension. And then go to 2, and then 3, and then 4, and try to hang out at 4 or 5 while swinging at your normal pace. This is going to really bring a lot of awareness to the amount of tension you have, so you can start creating some sort of lag. And the lag is a result of having no tension or being relaxed. It's not a physical kind of direction that I think a lot of players try to do. They see it as like, okay, I'm going to make it lag. It's not making something happen. It's an effect of being relaxed. And if you can do that, regardless of how you take the racket back, whether it's up, down like Federer, or even as crazy as Jack Sock is doing, having less tension will produce more power for you. So if you're in the business of improving, and you are because you've watched this far, make sure you check out Essential Tennis, because we have a free membership where you can learn how to take these type of progressions and implement in your game. Not only just for the forehand, but for the serve and every other part of your game. So go out to Essential Tennis and check it out today.